All right. Well, we're pretty close to 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get this started here today. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this is the fourth installment of the Kernza Cafe Chats for all things Kernza related. And today we have a session focused specifically on Kernza marketing. And we're really pleased to have Tessa Peters from the Land Institute, Alex Heilman from MadAg, and then Nicole Tautges from Michael Field's Ag Institute. So kind of three people that are pretty foundational to the Kernza landscape, but three folks that have a different angle on all things marketing Kernza from kind of the outside and the inside and throughout. So really pleased to have you all aboard here. Again, I'm Matt Leavitt. I'm the agronomist with the University of Minnesota for Evergreen Initiative. Also on the line here is my colleague Sienna Nesser, the CLC adoption specialist, does a lot with a lot of the back end programs that we run out of the U, and also does a lot with Kernza specific programming through the Kernza CAP project. And our contact information is there. Again, we hope this session is going to be kind of a useful springboard for more educational programming and fact sheets, field days, et cetera, as we come into spring. So if you have ideas for how we can continue this connection for you folks, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So here's kind of a short roadmap of where we've been and where we're going. If you've missed some of the previous talks, or if you want to share any of that information or catch up, all of them are going to be on YouTube. The first two, Intro to Kernza and the Planting and Management talk, are up there right now. The other two will be up there shortly. The one from 2 weeks ago on Kernza Harvest, and then this one here today. And then we're going to complete the series in 2 weeks with two speakers talking about utilizing Kernza as a forage crop. So both baling it and grazing it. And so kind of two different, angles of utilizing the crop for forage. So keep an eye out for that as well. And just as a call out reminder, you may have heard me say this before if you've been on some of these talks, but we really want the series to be an open line for growers to communicate with one another. So any and all folks are welcome to join in here. We're really pleased to have everybody on board here. We just ask that if you're not currently growing the crop, that you keep the lines as open as possible for growers to get their questions answered and connect. I think this session specifically will be a little different in that, we're going to have different players from across the ecosystem here, including marketers, buyers, food makers, et cetera. But definitely want this to be more grower focused as opposed to kind of TA support focused. And again, if you have any questions at all during the presentations, feel free to type your questions in the chat, unmute, ask your questions. Hope we're going to have a dynamic discussion here in the next hour or so. I mentioned this last week as well, but for those that missed that, University of Minnesota does have funding available to pay for Kernza grain testing. That's both for bin run, kind of seed grade testing, and also for finished grain testing. So just wanted to plug that program again. If you have an interest, the best person to contact is my colleague Andrew Leach. We do have a website put up for that. But if you have any questions at all about what current or historical stored quality is like on your grain, or needing any information there, we'd love to help you out. That's kind of part of our protocol here. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and hand things over to Tessa Peters from the Land Institute to kind of kick us off with a talk about marketing Kernza grain.
Everyone, thanks so much for having me, and I'm excited to chat with y'all for a little bit. I'm gonna just kind of share. I'm gonna start by sharing some of the. Are you guys seeing my presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to just start with sharing some of the results from our annual survey, so that I think helps us understand the supply side of the market, and give you hopefully a little bit of an update on things that are happening. So, yeah, I'm trying to make it so that I can see you, but I probably can't. So if you have questions, just shout them, I guess.
I'll keep an eye on the chat too.
Okay, great. So in 2023, there were about this is a conversion, so about 300,000 pounds of grain harvested. This we estimated about a 40% loss compared to like bin grain run. So this is an estimation of how many pounds we think are currently were harvested in 2023. That translates to about 300 pounds an acre. That's a little bit higher than last year. Last year, I think it was 288 pounds, but pretty similar. Probably, no significant difference between last year and this year. Hay, there were 814 tons of hay estimated that were harvested from Kernza fields, and folks grazed, about 650 acres of Kernza. So I think this is really something that we continue to harp on, but I think the multi-use piece is a really important aspect for mitigating risk in terms of, the market for Kernza. That being said, the highest percentage of single use is still grain only, and there's 750 acres that folks were using for grain only. That, of course, just means that you're taking all of your risk on the grain side, as opposed to using these other methods of mitigating kind of the cost for the marketplace. So total grain yield estimates, this is broken down basically conventional and transitional versus organic and ROC. So in the Midwest, we've got a little over 200 pounds an acre. For the organic, we saw actually pretty high yields and ROC in the 300 plus pounds an acre. Great Plains conventional was less than 300, and then in the West we saw again more than 200 pounds an acre for the organic and ROC and the conventional fields. A lot of this is probably due to stand age, and we'll look at some. I think I have some numbers to look at kind of yields over stand age. So this is just to show what's in storage. So there's that 300,000 plus pounds from harvest this year, but there are additional grain in storage. So again, these are clean grain estimates, unless people actually had clean grain and then we used that number. But if not, then it was estimated at a 40% loss. So another, 300 plus pounds of grain in storage. And the majority of that is conventional. There's a little bit of organic, very little of ROC, but primarily this conventional grain, conventionally produced grain in storage right now. I thought I would just show some of the planting data. There are currently, about 2,500 acres that are considered established. A lot, like if acres were planted in the fall and we just don't know how they're going to do in the spring, we consider those unestablished. So we just don't know. So some of them were already determined that they had failed, and some acres this is from last year. Last year, we hadn't evaluated acres. So some of those acres that were planted in 2022 did not establish. And some acres were rotated out of production because the fields were old. So, and then this year, about 738 acres were planted. So you can kind of see where those happened in the Midwest, primarily in Minnesota, which of course is because of the support, I think, that Minnesota growers have from the Forever Green Initiative. So their market remains soft, especially for conventional grain. I think that's obvious if you look at this storage data. So we are seeing where we have a bunch of initiatives. We're trying to help with market development and things like that in different ways. Kernza Cap has some money to develop kind of industry-wide marketing materials. And I think Catherine Shute from Forever Green is going to be leading that work. The Land Institute is working to build out processing capacity. So we have grants in for mobile processing, and then for a larger aggregation processing and innovation center in Kansas. So we will hopefully know about that in the spring. We also are doing a joint marketing initiative with Sustainagrain. They have a consultant who's helping with kind of overall go-to-market analysis and strategy. Oops. And then we're also doing a pilot Earth Day initiative to move Kernza into Kansas businesses and provide training to those businesses so that their staff know how to discuss and promote Kernza to the consumers. So we're working on building that initiative over the next probably about a month so that everything is ready to launch for Earth Day.
That's
And
awesome. I just wanted to make sure things were crystal clear too. The Land Institute does not buy any grain.
oh,
Is
we
that
do
right?
not.
Okay,
We do
good. I
not
just wanted to
purchase
make sure
grain.
that
No.
that message was abundantly clear to everybody here.
Yeah. I mean, we've purchased small amounts for different projects or things like that, but we're not like a grain buyer. For if we need grain for specific research reasons, we have done like spot purchases for those projects. Other initiatives, we're working on developing a grain monitoring network so that we can ensure high quality. And we've been working with Andrew, as Matt said, that the Forever Green has money to do grain testing, and we're working to expand that. So not just in Minnesota, but to bring that nationwide so that we would have a better pool to understand, what is the nutritional quality and the functional quality of the grain looking like across the nation. And we're also working to develop a grading standard that would then be incorporated into the Identity Preserve program. And we're pursuing different nutritional claims. We have to get this grain monitoring network and the grading standard in place to be able to pursue nutritional claims. So we have to be able to make sure that like grade A Kernza is high in fiber, or grade A Kernza is high in protein. We need to have that grade so that we can say those kind of things. And that would be kind of the next step to working with FDA. We're still working on pursuing novel food approval in the EU. We submitted, I think, in the last 2 weeks, the dossier back to the European Food Safety Association or something, EFSA. So we're waiting to hear back from them and see if they have any additional things that they need clarified. And then we should see by the end of the week an LCA coming through with some grain that was grown in Kansas. So we're looking at that and having those ecosystems benefits confirmed and building out a way for more growers to be able to confirm those across the board. We're working on standardizing the marketing and communication materials. That's sort of the work that I alluded to that Catherine will be leading. And then also the UC Davis, our partners through Kernza Cap, are working on some a demand analysis for California, and I think some of the other kind of West Coast. So looking at market development for that particular region. Our recommendation for 2024 is that unless you have explicit instructions from a commercial marketer that you work with, or pre-existing contracts for the sale of your grain, or a direct market that you feel confident you're going to be able to sell your grain through, that you utilize the graze or hay options while we try and create market pull-through for the grain that's in storage, as well as the grain that gets harvested that was harvested this year. So that's our overall recommendation at the Land Institute. And I buzzed through that pretty quickly, but I know we have a couple other speakers. So I don't know if we're taking questions in the middle or at the end, but happy to have those.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Tessa, for that overview of where we've been and kind of where we are now. I'll open up the floor if anybody wants to ask questions of Tessa. We'll give it a couple minutes here, and then if not, we can transition to our next speaker.
I was wondering what the roadblocks are to the market of Kernza. If you've got all that grain in storage, do you see any obvious roadblocks to why that's not getting out into the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, a year ago, I would have said price for sure was a big piece of the roadblock. And I think Alex and Nicole can talk a little bit more about price. But I know with the price of grain coming down, now it's really just building up knowledge about the grain, I think is really needed. I think having that kind of ecosystems benefit analysis is going to be really important to opening doors to some of the like mid-size and bigger markets. And I think having nutritional claims is going to be huge in terms of educating consumers about why they should do this. Consumers don't really buy on environmental claims. And so we really do need to have some of these nutritional claims. So those are the kind of like big things that I think have been holding the market back. Of course, there are also like these macroeconomic factors. You know, the war in Ukraine has caused a lot of price volatility in wheat, which has made businesses more reluctant to buy higher priced alternative grains or niche products. Yeah, and of course, COVID. I know that a lot of the 22 grain and some other, you know, there were businesses that were still really struggling that had imagined that they were going to purchase Kernza and then were unable to come through with those contracts. So yeah, the hope is that we're able to like move past and overcome this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So with that, I will hand things over to Alex Heilman, senior marketer at Mad Ag, and also is involved with marketing Kernza grain through the Perennial Promise Growers Co-op. So Alex, I will hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. So I guess briefly, I'll do a quick introduction of myself. And then today, what we really want to cover is we want to talk a little bit about the types of Kernza classes that we're starting to see movement on, as well as some pricing dynamics. And then I also want to cover a little bit about like future market moves and where we're starting to see the market head. I will say that all of the like kind of opinions and thoughts has been around our work marketing Kernza through the Perennial Promise Growers Cooperative. So I just want to make sure that it's not a broad sweeping statement of like, this is the definition of the Kernza market. This has really been our experience marketing it over the last 2 years. So thanks for having me on the call. My name is Alex Heilman. I am the director and lead Mad Markets, which is kind of the market arm of Mad Agriculture. Just really quickly, Mad Agriculture is 501c3 nonprofit. We work to help farmers transition into organic production systems and regenerative production systems. And we do so through market access, technical assistance programs, and storytelling. And we also have a capital arm that provides long-term working capital loans to farmers to bridge like transition financing effectively. So I lead the marketing team. I also, as part of our work, we work with the Perennial Promise Growers Cooperative, which is a collective of Kernza growers mostly across the upper Midwest. That engagement is we do supply chain development as well as market development. Over the last 2 years, what we've done is we've worked with the group to assemble like the understanding of what storage and inventory is. We've also assembled processing partners and managed that relationship. And then we've really been like kind of the go-to market, like commercial development side. What that really entails is that we've probably sent out a couple hundred samples to both like multinationals as well as small regional companies across the country. We work with kind of buyers big and small to both educate them on what Kernza is, but also availability and like market access. It's not uncommon for someone to say, I want to come into the market, but I need 25 truckloads, which I can't tell you how many times that happens, which is just, it's a funny thing to kind of have to work through, both from a price, but also like expectation setting type scenario. From there, you know, what we really do is we like educate the market broadly, and then also just set up trade contracts. So what I want to maybe walk through from a slide perspective is just how our work has evolved, really based on the feedback of both buyers as well as other trade partners. So the first slide I want to show and just talk through is like initiative evolution. So when we started working with Kernza in the fall of 2021 through the cooperative, some of the initial thoughts and assumptions kind of across the industry, but also with the grower collective was that, this is a product that we're going to be able to sell in more of like a bulk commodity type initiative, where, we'd align with other processing partners. They would kind of do all the cleaning of this. Really, we're just kind of the aggregator of the actual demand basis as well as the supply side. Really quickly, we learned that that is not how the industry really wants to transact, for the most part. And so what the industry, and I'm just going to kind of skip ahead here, what the industry really is looking for, and I say this both from a brewer industry as well as the food industry, is like a value-added product. So over the course of the last 2 years, we've really worked to pivot to stand up cleaned grain products as well as flour and flaked Kernza. The reason kind of focusing on those three is that has been a lot of the feedback from those different buyer segments, and again, being like the food and also the beverage industry. So at this point, Perennial Promise Growers Cooperative is very much so kind of an ingredients company that also works with farmers to then get these three value-added products out into the marketplace. Moving along, I do just want to kind of show those three SKUs really quickly. So this is, the products that we market as well as kind of handle. And one of the bigger marketing initiatives that we've done, just skipping ahead, is working with Patagonia Provisions to stand up a beer program as well as a pasta program that includes, right now there's officially 11 brewers in it. We just onboarded an additional cohort, so more coming online shortly. And the goal is to kind of continue to grow and expand this program, where Kernza is included in a kind of a meaningful contribution in the grain builds. And then it's collective marketing across these, national brewers, as well as the larger Patagonia brands. This has been one of the bigger initiatives and one of the bigger market outlets. All right, I'm going to stop there to then pivot and talk a little bit about what we're seeing from like classes of Kernza and how that really moves. We do work across both regenerative organic certified organic, as well as conventional Kernza. So we have those three management like SKUs, so to speak. From an early adopter standpoint, and again, this is really in our experience, the channels that have been most active have been regenerative organic certified and certified organic. Part of the reason that we think why that is at this point in time is that, Kernza is still very much so in this early adoption curve. The industries that have taken most notice of Kernza have been very focused on sustainability. And so price has been a little bit less of a driver. And so for them wanting to essentially utilize certifications to also help tell a story for their own consumers has been one of the reasons why we're seeing more of that movement in certified organic and ROC. So to date, we do not have an issue selling ROC. I would say that every truly ounce of grain of ROC that we have access to is like already pre-sold. We've now pushed a lot into certified organic. This is also moving quite well. There is still a decent amount of certified organic in storage. However, moving towards some contracts here within the cooperative that is also mostly accounted for at this point in time. The one that we are not seeing a lot of movement with, which Tessa also just kind of attributed to, is conventional. I do think, just looking forward, noting that there are some potential supply shortages between conventional and certified organic and ROC, that there very well could be a whiplash effect that we're going to see here in the coming months of, as more and more brewers in particular and distillers are interested in the grain, wanting to get access to it, and also at a price point that they're more in line with, will be a little bit of a driver and push effect into conventional. Especially as we start to look towards more like flaked Kernza or cracked Kernza that they more readily want to access. It's not to say that that is going to be like the saving grace. It's just that's something that we're taking notice of just as interest has been building, and that there is shortages kind of in those other two sides of it. The last thing I think I want to talk about is around pricing. So over the last 2 years, we started and Kernza was priced, quite high, and it made a lot of sense from, what does a farmer need on a per acreage level in order to still want to continue to plant Kernza. So in the beginning, and sorry, my camera is being funny here. In the beginning, ROC was very much so trading at $6.50 to $7 a pound. organic was trading, $5 to $6 a pound, and conventional was really in that like $4 range. Over the course of the last 12 months, I mean, there has been a price correction. And a lot of this is done in a way to still make sure that farmers are getting paid per acre, what makes sense for them to continue to plant it, but at a rate where the industry is willing to adopt greater volumes. So there's been about a 50% price correction. Right now we see ROC trading at about $4.50 to $5 a pound. Organic is like $3.75 to $4, and conventional we're really seeing that $1.75 to $2 range. I mean, we're not necessarily trying to move those targets at this point in time, seeing how as like we're now having more of a supply crunch specifically for organic and conventional, and we wouldn't want to kind of drop the bottom out of, organic and ROC, and we wouldn't want to drop the bottom out of pricing with conventional because it would just have a pull down effect. So that, roughly speaking, has been, what we've seen from both a price perspective as well as where we're seeing broader adoption. I guess I went through that kind of quickly, but I guess I want to see if there's any questions or anything else I can help to answer. And again, this has really been our experience marketing Kernza, but through the cooperative, and it has been with a fair amount of growers.
Thank you so much, Alex. That's super excellent information. Question here in the chat. Who is behind ROC? I guess maybe that's, I'm assuming, meaning like where's the demand coming from ROC, but maybe.
Sorry, yeah, that was more about administration, like who actually provides that certification.
So it's its own standalone certification that was a partnership across a couple different CPG companies as well as the Rodale Institute.
I'm not
Alex,
sure.
what about transitional Kernza? Any difference there between conventional and organic if it's transitional?
You're saying from a market premium perspective?
Yes, probably it's treated as conventional, probably, huh? Transitional.
At this point, it is. Like, I know a few years ago, there was a little bit of a program with that, specifically with Sustainagrain and I think in Patagonia. But at this point in time, we are not really seeing the market reward transitional, just because we're still kind of having a lot of conventional inventory.
Yeah, I had a question. The previous speaker from the Land Institute said that they didn't recommend harvesting as grain, rather do it as a forage. From the perspective of the growers co-op, I'm a member, a grower. Are you encouraging growers to grow more or at least maintain the acres they have or discontinue? Because I'm one of those organic grain farmers, and it's a touch and go thing. I mean, you mentioned the price. Well, from my perspective, a 50% cut is substantial. I understand you need to move the product, but at the same time, I have a lot of opportunity costs for other things that I could grow. So how competitive do you think the Kernza is with other organic crops, corn, beans, wheat? I know there's an environmental side to it, but you guys are talking $20 or $30 an acre, which that's the ecosystem services kind of numbers I've seen. I'm in Wisconsin, not in Minnesota. So those are some of my concerns. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what I've said, but.
Yeah, these are very fair concerns, and I actually share them all. I would say that for certified organic and ROC, I would very much so want to maintain those acres. And actually, we're getting to larger contracts here with regenerative organic certified. So we are very much so looking for growers to help transition into ROC, because that is like the one outlet where we do have like firm contracts in hands that we can deliver back, as well as organic, but to a little bit of a lesser extent. So those two I would maintain. And then to Tessa's point right now with conventional, I mean, there's a glut of conventional inventory. So on that side of things, I think not harvesting for grain at this point in time is probably in your best interest.
And going back to the regenerative organic, just as a kind of an anecdotal comment, I mean, that's a bolt on for people that are already certified organic. So, I mean, you'd go through your normal steps of being certified, and then the ROC is kind of an additional step that you take over and above that, including some nominal certification costs and inspection and stuff like that. But I think Tessa dropped a link to the Regen Organic page in the chat if you're interested.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tessa. And there is a committee now within the Perennial Promise Growers Co-op that will also help growers through that transition process. So if you are interested in that, I'd happy to put you in touch with the proper people. Any other questions?
Where are you folks, this is on my own question, but where are you folks at in terms of membership? Like, is that an actively growing cohort, or is it kind of stabilized, or where's that?
Yeah, I mean, it's ebbed and flowed a little bit, but I think it's stabilized. I think it's around 25 members right now. The highest I've seen it, I think, was at about 31. But right now in the mid to high 20s.
I heard that I was at Bang Brewery this last week and spoke very briefly to some people there, and they told me that Patagonia Provisions, which formerly had been super strict and committed to regen certification, are now dropping that because of the lack of regenerative certified grain and are going to be using organic, plain certified organic. I also have been looking into I'm certified organic, but I'm looking into having it be regenerative certified as well, but it's been very difficult. And I was actually quite discouraged by a organic certifier when I was trying to figure out how to, add that on to go regenerative. It was very discouraging, actually. And it's also very confusing. And apparently, the only place that this parent company, I looked to get the regen, and they said I had to go to their parent company, and their parent company is in Canada. So it's a lot of craziness actually to get regenerative certified, I have found. But I'm very, very inexperienced. This is my first year. I just planted this fall.
Well, a couple comments. Well, one, I know there's a few different like regenerative certification labels right now. But I would say that, we do have a pretty good relationship with the ROC, the Regenerative Organic Certification, that label that Tessa put into that chat, the one that's kind of with the Rodale Institute behind it. So if you do want additional support navigating that, we are very happy to. And to your other point, it is a bit of a nascent market right now, still very much so emerging. To clarify, though, with the beer program that Bang was referencing, so a lot of that actually was through our direction with them. And so what is essentially happening is the current amount of supply of regenerative organic certified outstrips the demands that beer program, as well as a couple other programs within ROC Kernza to date. And so what we've done is we've started kind of saying, if you want to continue to champion Kernza, you need to utilize both ROC as well as certified organic. And so, I mean, really, this is kind of a win actually for ROC Kernza, because we outstripped all of the actual current supply. And in order to continue to grow that market, we need to then backstep and say, let's also pull along certified organic. So really, this should not be discouraging. This should actually be encouragement of there is strong market signals for organic and even stronger for ROC.
Well, it kind of made me feel like not going to the trouble of ROC if they're going to start picking up more certified.
I can tell you that their intention is that as ROC supply increases, they do want the program to ultimately all be in ROC. So it's more of a stepping stone and not like this is the intention of the program long term.
Yeah, and to that point, again, anecdotal comments, but I mean, there's a shortage of organic inspectors nationwide, for all the inspection agencies. And I think specifically with ROC, there's few agencies that can actually do those certifications. But yeah, that Regen Organic website that Tessa dropped in the chat is probably your best starting spot if you want to go through that process.
Yeah, and I also just want to caveat one more thing. We're big proponents of Kernza, whether it's conventional, organic, or ROC certified. A lot of my comments are around meeting the market where the market is today. And so today, right now, this is kind of what we're seeing. But really, we would love for the conventional marketplace to also take off. And I think there's a little bit of a pull-on effect that may happen shortly. But just to be very crystal clear, we're not only activating or advocating for ROC or certified organic. We just want to make sure everyone really understands that this is a both ends type scenario.
Hi, this is Ben Benner, Alex, and um, I was kind of mulling over this not going to grain harvest with the the conventional, and just wondering, thinking through some of the initiatives that we've been working on, and how that's going to look in 12 to 18 months. So I'd have to think through that a little bit before I signed on to that that recommendation. We don't have projections, for what's coming up, but I just feel strongly that, the amount that we have actually could be sold through relatively quickly if that kind of bounce back effect happens, like you're saying. So
Certainly, yeah.
just to temper that a little bit, I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. So yeah.
Yes, sir. And I guess anyone who's a co-op member, we will definitely provide more direction as we essentially, like, in the coming months, as to what I think the co-op would want to see. So I just want to make sure that that's also crystal clear.
Yeah, so I'll add what I wrote in the chat, which is that any PPGC member should be listening to Alex for advice on whether to harvest grain or not.
Yes, and we will very much so come back in the coming weeks here around once we get closer to harvest as to what we think is probably the best outlet for it. So I just want to make sure that I'm saying we're not saying what to do with that inventory right now. We will come back to you all. And thank you for that caveat, Tessa.
Tessa, there's a question that maybe you can answer from the chat about what's the average amount of Kernza acreage planted at each, farm site is. Do you have that? A good sense of that?
I am going to give you an estimate because I don't see Hannah on, and she probably has that actual number in her brain. But I think
Hannah's
it's like
here.
20. Oh, Hannah, do you have that number in your brain?
Yeah, so the average is 27, but there's a huge range across the country. And yeah, I feel less comfortable giving the range, but the average is 27 acres. Does that help, Missy?
Yep, that helps. I just wondered if you had hundreds of people with 10 acres planted or like 3 people with a couple thousand,
No. It's much more like, we have around like 165 growers ish nationwide. And some of them hold licenses, but are sort of like waiting for the right time to plant. But it's, I would say most people are around that average. And in the Midwest, I think the field size is actually a little bigger than that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you again, Alex, for the presentation and for the information. So to your point about talking about different, snapshots of where the market is, there's obviously, a contingent of folks that are also going it on their own, so to speak, and kind of doing entrepreneurial activities. And I wanted to bring in one of those folks who is probably well known to you all in the Kernza community, Nicole Tautges from Michael Fields, who Kernza grower, researcher, and also entrepreneurial marketer as well. So Nicole, I will hand things off to you to kind of talk through your experience with that side of the marketing angle of Kernza.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tessa and Alex. It's a pleasure to talk after you guys. You always teach everyone so much. Yeah, my name's Nicole Tautges. I work for the Michael Fields Ag Institute. We're located in southeastern Wisconsin between Madison and Milwaukee. My remit there is as an agronomist and to conduct field research trials. So I'm a trained agronomist, but a beginning farmer. Is how I think about it. And I've been working in Kernza I've researched since 2017, since I did some postdoc research with Jake Youngers at UMN. And so I've been active in Kernza research circles for quite a number of years and into the early period with some of you growers were even active back then too. And then so I was a part of the large Kernza CAP grant, which is well known to many of you. And we were going to start a research field trial on our research ground at Michael Fields. And my boss at the time back in 2020 said, well, we have this pretty erodible slope and we've seen a lot of soil and water runoff there. He said, what if we planted Kernza on that slope? And that turned out to be about 20 acres total. And so I said, sure. But then we probably, for anybody who's worked at a nonprofit, money is not flush in those situations either. So then we had to try to figure out how to make money off of it if we could and supplement our nonprofit budget. And it got to the and we worked with the co-op a little bit, and everyone involved in the co-op is wonderful. We are just a little bit far away from a lot of that activity and the processing center for that. And that was the main driver of what led us to explore some other local marketing options. I also discovered for myself, and I think this comes from being a beginning grain farmer as well, I don't want my grain to be shipped very far, as also because I was talking about Kernza as this crop that's really important for soil carbon and climate change mitigation and offsetting CO2 emissions and blah, blah, blah. So then I felt uncomfortable putting my grain on a truck to travel 500 to 1,000 miles during the supply chain processing stream. So that was a big motivator for me in exploring local marketing. I got lucky in that we have a toll cleaning facility right in our town who's operated by a really wonderful grower. He's one of those people that invested in some grain cleaning as a ancillary operation to his organic farm. He's an organic farmer as well, and he happened to have a dehuller. So we worked with him to get our grain cleaned and dehulled in 2022, our 2022 harvest. And then I bought a very small mill, a couple tabletop mills. So when one overheated, I'd switch to the next one. And we just started milling the dehulled grain that way, putting it in 1 pound bags, and we sold it online. We sold it through word of mouth, that sort of thing. I also found it helpful. And another motivator for that was, at least where I was in Wisconsin, forgive me for saying this, Alex, and co-op people, but there are just some reason that people did not want to go through the sample request process for trying to get a sample out of the co-op. So I was able to try to get some product into the hands of some end users who may be less cooperative or more in the weeds. But we were able to get product into their hands for them to test. And so in terms of the Kernza CAP and market expansion activities, that was important to me as well, to try to get the grain out as testing samples. And I would give them, like a bag, very small amounts. And then if they came back wanting more, then, we could talk about how best to fill those orders. And that didn't happen a whole lot in the first year, but I think after about a year of doing that now, there's a little bit more momentum picking up in that regard. Yeah, so I sold some whole grain, but I was working with flour a bunch. I did figure out that toasting the grain helped its flavor profile. So I did that in relatively small batches in the oven, toasting the grain. And then we'd let that cool fully, and we would mill it And then I did try sifting it in different ways. So sifting out different proportions of the bran, and found that definitely sifting seems to improve the baking experience for people, particularly for bread. People working with it for other applications like crackers, I found were very popular. They didn't seem to care as much about the degree of bran sifting or removal. The couple people who I got feedback from, people do not seem to like it for bread. It brings from my experience, I mean, you'll get a couple who are really passionate about it. I would say on the whole, that's not where I saw a lot of market promise. Again, this is just my anecdotal experience. What I did observe that a lot of bakers took it and used it for crackers, and that seems like a slam dunk product. Multiple bakeries have told me that they sold out of all of the crackers they could make, and that seems to be the case for Perennial Pantry as well. And looking at their cracker stock online, which I just look at from time to time, and other people have told me they've wanted to get a hold of they've tried to buy Perennial Pantry crackers and they're always sold out. So seems like that's a big area for potential end use expansion and targeting. Crackers aren't always a really high value product, but they certainly can be. I think part of the problem is that I don't know that I've ever heard of somebody talk about themselves exclusively as a cracker maker as compared to a baker, but that's very bread for. So maybe we'll get some cracker enthusiast hipsters rising to the top, and they could really help the Kernza market. What else was I going to say? Yields are a huge challenge for the profitability of this whole enterprise. Really looking forward to the next variety release. I probably won't plant. I won't establish anything more until we get a new variety. Every variety release is going to improve yields, I think, and will help tick that up. Most processors would probably say that increasing the seed size is important, as with a lot of other grains. I think that's certainly true for flour. You lose a lot of product when you sift out increasing amounts of the bran. Given that you're already working with large percentage decreases of marketable product at each step of processing, any additional, right, from bin run to clean out to dehulling, that probably takes out at least 50% of what your weight is as measured in the combine bin. And then once you start sifting out bran, that's getting you down even further from already low yields. So I'm looking forward to those improvements, but I also think it's important to stick with it. And I have full faith that those yield improvements and quality improvements will come. Apart from crackers, what did people really like it for? Yeah, it seems distilling is a really promising market. We have to address the flaking and cracking processing issue. The co-op has done a lot of really good work on, making contacts in that space. So in terms of local markets, I don't know if it's best to send people to the co-op. It very well may be. And also, yeah, I view this as part of my work with a lot of other small grains, where there are a lot of smaller producers interested in growing grains and including them in, say, CSA shares, small farm stores, farmers markets. And so I do think it's nice to get more people growing grains. Kernza is certainly a more challenging crop to grow because of mostly the processing extra steps, like that it needs dehulling and everything. So when we talk with beginning farmers in our cohort that we have at the Institute, we do get a lot of interest in Kernza, and I usually say try, a few other grains first before you explore Kernza. But also what's been really important to people is the labor savings and the fuel savings of not having to cultivate an annual crop, and that certainly factors in to the economics as well. And then if you're engaging more in direct marketing activities, which certainly do take a lot of time, well, at least you're not running across the field as many times post-establishment. So I hope that covers it. Happy to answer questions. Sorry, I don't have slides. I'm on the road today. And I hope someday that joining the co-op is going to make sense for us, because this is all a lot of work and a pain. I look forward to more processing facilities coming online as part of that co-op network that will service more growers across a wider geographic region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Really great information from your perspective there. Question came through the chat about how much your processing equipment. Do you have a sense of cost on like the dehauler and the tabletop mills and stuff like that?
Yeah, I did actually spec out, like, explore if we wanted to get our own equipment and do it ourselves. The smallest dehauler that you can impact dehauler that you can get from Forsberg, the company, was $14,000. That wasn't a food safe one technically, with stainless steel lining, but that's usually not, that's only necessary in really hardcore cases from what I understand. Let's see, a gravity table, we used a gravity table to clean it. Screens are relatively cheap. We needed 4 to 6 screens depending on how many options you want. So it's probably about $1,500, $2,000 worth of screens. Most of the growers probably know what gravity tables cost. I think maybe 20 grand new, less than that if you can get one on auction. I'm not storing in bins, but I would like to get some, but a lot of people here probably have some. The mills are complicated because they make really small mills, and then there aren't very many options in between that I've found that are good. Like, they're either really small or really huge. I haven't fully explored like the mid-size mill landscape, but then you can buy a small mill that works really well for $500. I have a couple of those, and they're slow, but they're not slow. You can do 20 pounds an hour if you really go for it. That's really small for a lot of the growers here we're talking about. So this is very much a direct marketing approach. You can have somebody mill it for you who has a mill. I think that's probably a good way to go if you're dealing with larger volumes. If you get a larger mill yourself, those can run like 60K. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I have looked into this stuff. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, with that, we can conclude a couple minutes early today. Again, appreciate you all joining in. And just as a reminder, we're going to have our last talk in the series in 2 weeks, same time, 1 p.m. on March 6th on cogent to Tessa's point about haying and grazing Kernza. It's an excellent forage crop. And in fact, intermediate wheatgrass was selected as a forage crop first and foremost before it was selected as a grain crop. So if you have an interest in learning more about how growers are approaching that and kind of cash flowing that part of the enterprise, definitely join us then. And until then, we'll see you next time. Take care.